good. Thanks.
All righty. So are we live? We are live.
We are
Wonderful.
live.
So today we're talking about fixing our foundation before we scale. Random acts of marketing don't fix operational chaos. They only magnify it. So we have in the room today, we have Kris Rohman, who is a business operational leader and business operations leader and consultant. So he's going to talk about what's going on in your business before you go out there and put it out to the world, right? We are Nate and Simone. We talk all things marketing. And we also have in the room, we have Marlene, who is a wonderful guest and attendee and may have some questions for Kris. We don't know. We'll see how this goes. Anyhow, share this out to your friends and colleagues and let them know that we're here so that we can, help us with that algorithm, y'all. And let's get going. Hey, Kris. Hey, Nate.
Hello, hello.
Hey, how's everyone doing?
Yeah.
Great.
So just to kind of set the stage here for Kris, most businesses, most businesses, they like to chase their leads. They like to generate more traffic and essentially create more noise. But what they don't realize in the process is that their systems oftentimes can't really handle it, and so I think that's kind of what Kris is going to be talking about here a little bit today. Having that foundation, the firm structure underneath on which you're going to build everything, right? So, unfortunately, a lot of business owners think that what we need is more leads, more sales, but it ends up being the wrong choice if your foundation is shaky, right? I like to say that you need to have that firm foundation before you start hanging pretty things on the wall. So, some things that may be of concern in this case, where the founder of the business is still kind of in the middle of everything. There's no consistent client experience, and there's chaos in the handoff between sales, delivery, and support a lot oftentimes. And a lot of that leads to costs. There's the operational gaps cost money. There's loss of trust. There's wasted leads, churn of clients, among other things, I'm sure. So, Kris, what are some of the earliest warning signs that to look for when you're diagnosing an operational breakdown?
Yeah, good question. It could be answered a lot of different ways. I think one of the biggest things is just, you had just mentioned it, a client churn. Like I'm going to just kind of break it down a little bit. The client churn
Yep.
is a symptom of a larger problem. And unfortunately, when it's gone through the entire course of the business, then you see client churn. So by just reacting to the client churn, you're really just looking at a Band-Aid of going, oh, how do I fix this? How do I keep clients? It starts to show further in of people being confused, the owner or founder being stuck in all the middle of everything. So trust breaks down. You see it in the clients, right? They lose trust and therefore they want to churn. But there's also the trust of the team around the founder and just the leadership team, et cetera, that really you start to see it at that point. So I think some of the earlier signs is realizing how to build that trust internally before, as it is an indication of the trust that breaks down from a client perspective, because the work suffers and the delivery is scattered or haphazard.
So, would you say that is the number one key thing, or is there another sort of overlooked internal friction point that ends up killing growth?
Well, I think just generally speaking, the challenge is most of the time the business is going to try to solve a people issue with process or with technology. And I think that is a bigger place to look at. So if you build accountability charts and you build like ways to measure things internally, that is going to give you an indication that you may not have the right people in the right seats. So I think the thing is like, okay, hey, we got this new technology, we have AI, whatever it might be, that'll fix it. But if you go down to the basics and really like boil it down to just what is needed to do a business, it really becomes a people thing in terms of, do you have the right people in the seats? Do you have people who understand their job? EOS, and I know Nate, you and I talked about that. EOS,
Uh,
it talks about, do people get it, want it, and have the capacity to do it? So by measuring people from that perspective, you really can get a better indication of the talent within and making sure you're putting people in the right spot so they can actually execute. Once you have that in place, those basics, then you can start to layer on other things, which is what you talked about earlier, Nate, about like internally it needs to be strong before you can outwardly go. You can get all the leads in the world, but if you don't have the right intake, if you don't have the right sales guy, if you don't have the right fulfillment,
hmm.
it really is just wasted time and wasted money, wasted effort.
Yeah. So can you walk us through a time when you were talking with the founder, you worked with the founder of the business, and they thought that they had a marketing problem, but it was ended up really being an ops problem?
Yeah, sure. I think again, going back to the accountability chart, when I go into a business, I really look at from all the different angles. Can you show me the data? Can you show me the can I interview and the stakeholders and understand how things go? So by looking at the data of sales, let's just use that as an example because it's an easy one. If you look at sales and you're saying, is this person actually performing? How many months in a row or how many quarters did they actually hit their mark? If they haven't, maybe so there's a difference between a marketing problem and a sales problem. So that where does it actually where does it actually show the cracks? And I think that's an indication of going in and looking at it, going, all right, you're getting a lot of leads. Are they the right leads? Maybe they are, maybe they're not. Or are they the right salespeople that are actually going to close? Are they being able to take those solid MQLs and turn them into SQLs and then convert them into customers? I'm talking more in like a service-based industry, but there's obviously different ways to look at it.
Okay. So, the three things that we talk a lot about on our conversations are the visibility, viability, and building value in a business. And that it's that visibility component that brings the attention and opportunities, but viability is that thing that allows the business to actually capitalize on it. Which, of course, operations would be a crucial part of that. So,
Yeah, yeah.
um, so all right. If we look at continuing along here with looking at what a strong foundation actually looks like. Um, and I'm guessing it's not about adding more complexity to the business, but rather, being clear on what you actually need and being consistent. Um, and we can get into a little bit on that. What are some of the key elements of a strong foundation? I guess what's one internal system that you think every business should have dialed in? Let's start there.
Yeah, sure. Again, whether it's EOS, which for those who don't know, entrepreneurial operating system, whether it's that system or it's another, is really the basics. Have you defined what everyone's role is? Have you created a dashboard of data points that are important to see how the business is performing? Do you have the right people in the right seats? Do you have things documented, at least in an overall or a high level view, so people know what to do? Those seem like super basic, but the majority of the clients that I work with don't have that in place. So they've been running and gunning. They've cut corners because that's how you start a business. You wear multiple hats, but eventually when you have duplication, and I use this example other times, when you have duplication and it's, Nate, you and I both do that same job at times. So there's two owners, but that means no one owns it because you're like, I thought Kris was going to do it. And then you're like, no, well, I thought you were going to do it. So by just using that example, by creating like the lanes, you already have clarity. You take away the confusion. So I think to answer your question, it's just having those basics of an operating model that allow you to see what's happening. And those data points are really important too. The challenge there is clients often say, hey, I want to track X, Y, or Z data point, but they have no way of tracking it. So then that creates a whole nother project in itself.
Yeah. But one that would be well worth the effort, obviously. If you can
Yeah,
track it.
absolutely. But I think that's where it becomes like, okay, if you want to track that, then we have to put a system in place to actually get that information. And I'm really big, and I think most people would be from operations, is like using the data to help inform the decisions. It shouldn't be a gut, right? If you see a trend happening where something's going on in the business, you have to look deeper and deeper and deeper to find what that core issue is. And if you can't find it, you better put your heads together to find it, because then you're just like I mentioned earlier, just solving the symptoms, and you're never going to get really lasting change.
I've heard the concept of asking five whys,
I
five
love
why
that.
questions. Is that
Yeah. I've
so?
never, I know it, but I don't know the framework for it except just asking why 5 times. But
Yeah,
yeah, I love
basically.
that. I love that. It's like, why? And then
Why
you
that?
start,
Why
I
that?
know. Yeah. It's so
Yeah.
great because
Yeah.
what I see in meetings that I'm in is someone's like, oh, let me just, yeah, we'll solve it right now. Let me send a Slack message. And you're like, whoa, slow down. Like, how do you know we haven't determined the why that is an issue and then why that? So I agree with that approach.
Okay, so how do you help business owners go from that tribal knowledge to documented processes? What does that look like?
Yeah, that's majority of my clients want me to come in to do that. So it's just you start with the foundational elements of the business, meaning what's your vision, what are your goals, what are your uniques, and then you start to build a lot of the other components I mentioned. But I think starting there is really the beginning. It's surprising that most don't understand like what is their mission, what is the vision of the company, what is their 10-year target, and you start asking those questions, and you see the like gears going in their heads of like, oh, I haven't even thought about this. What kind of company do you want? What kind of core values do you want to instill? How are you hiring people? How are you building the company? And I think all of those, like, again, they seem basic, but there's a lot of nuance there and a lot of work that needs to go into that to figure out how you want the company to become. It is a living and breathing thing. So how do
Yeah.
you shape it? And that's a constant thing, right? It's like home improvement projects. As soon as you finish one, you recognize the other. You finish the floor and you recognize that wall doesn't look great, so now you got to paint that. And then the lighting fixtures. It just happens over and over and over, continues. But if you keep that basic information intact, you're always rooted in something. You're always anchored to something. So when you're making a decision and you're thinking about how to move to the next phase of the company, you have that baseline that you can always lean on, that helps to guide. So hopefully you're not changing your vision every 2 months. Hopefully you're not changing your core values every 3 months. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
things should remain stable, and then you build off from that.
And
Like having guardrails and
Yeah.
boundaries so that, yeah,
Yes.
nothing goes too far left or too far right. And you're creating and you have all these great ideas within certain boundaries. You know how far you can go. It reminds me, so I used to work with musicians, and we used to tell them, learn the rules of songwriting first before you decide to break them. And
Yeah, I love that. Well,
Mhm.
I just thought of bowling. You know, when you start, like, at least I have kids, so when they start bowling, they put up these rails so they don't get gutter balls every time.
Yeah.
And that allows
Uh,
them to learn. And then as they get older, you put the railings down so they can, but in the beginning, it allows them to still have fun,
yeah,
mhm.
but within those
while
guardrails.
they're learning. Yeah.
I'll tell
Yeah.
you, like in my experience working with like service-based businesses, again, a lot of them think that the problem is they need more leads to get more sales, and to some extent that's true because it's, so project-based. But um, the issue there is they end up getting the wrong leads because they don't have the basics figured out as far
Hmm.
as who they're actually going after, what is the messaging that they're trying to put out there, how are they differentiating themselves. This
Right.
is like foundational stuff that they need to have in place, and it affects so many different things, and not the least of which is their marketing and creating ads. But then of course further on down the road when it comes to their operations,
Yeah.
going back
You,
to viability, that's what it's
yeah.
all about.
Yeah, I was going to say a client that I had, I ended up staying, getting hired on, but one of the biggest things they were wondering how they could keep clients. They were getting clients but not keeping them,
Mhm.
and it was the insight I had is they were so wide with what they were offering. So it was we do event planning, web development,
Mm,
marketing campaigns. And by looking at and going through that exercise, the differentiators, we're able to like cull that down to just,
mm,
all right, here is our core focus. Because if
mhm,
you're everything, you're not going to do anything right. It's like going to the restaurant. We've all
mhm.
been to those restaurants where they offer Mexican, Chinese, and hamburgers. You're like,
Yeah,
how
yeah.
are they
Yeah.
possibly doing
What
this?
is this place? Yeah,
Like, because
yeah.
you can't be
Confusing
great at
mess.
all. You can't be great at all of those, right?
Right.
Hmm.
So I think
Hmm.
that's an example of some a term I like is simplify and strengthen. By simplifying, you're
Hmm.
actually strengthening your outputs
Hmm.
because the team is getting repetition on doing the same type of work over and over and over. By spreading it so and going, yeah, we can do this and we can do that, the team has to learn all of that. And therefore, mistakes happen. Therefore, going back to earlier, that trust is diminished with the client. You guys
Hmm.
said you could do event planning and this is a mess. Well, because the team's learning on the fly.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're so busy, like they know all this other stuff. Then it's like, oh, we've got an event planning contract. Okay, now let's figure
Yeah.
that part out, right?
Yeah. And you have
Yeah.
a project manager who's used to doing marketing campaign work with ads and copywriters and things like that. And now they're having to be put into something that they're learning, like I said, as they go, and it's just
Hmm.
jeopardizing the quality, jeopardizing the client relationship.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Absolutely.
So, so building a viable business means, having your individual roles figured out, who does what in the business, and then all the expectations are clear. I think that's crucial. Okay, so let's go to keep going on here. Um, Trying to go from being a business in a reactive situation to more resilient. Um, all right, so let's look here. What usually triggers a client to finally say, "Okay, I need help"? What's the breaking point that they encounter?
I think it's usually just a moment of I'm burnout, I'm tired, I'm hiring people, but I'm still working the same amount of work, same amount of hours. That usually is when I'm seeing clients reach out in that state of, I don't want to call it despair, but in a state of something something isn't working. We're gaining revenue, we're growing, but it's either that we're growing or we've stopped growth, and I feel this pressure and I feel this chaos. And so my goal is bringing clarity and structure and creating a culture of accountability. Like those things are really important in order for the business to shift and transform into a proactive company. So a big part of that is having weekly meetings that are set at the same time for the same duration with the same agenda, and that allows you to go through certain things, a scorecard, which is your data points, what are your quarterly goals, what are the issues and how do you tackle those. So you go through it systematically in order to create that proactive, because you're looking at the data and you're going, oh, that seems odd, it continues to go down or it's going up or whatever. And that allows you to start thinking about it proactively versus waiting for a client to go like, I don't like working with you guys are not hitting the mark. So you can track thing on client satisfaction, but if you track client satisfaction, you have to have a way to actually get client satisfaction scores. So it all becomes like a system. And I think that's the way that you create a more proactive stance.
Mhm. Excuse me. Okay. Excuse me. Do you feel that creating this, I think we kind of touched on this somewhat, but having a structure in place, does that actually end up sort of counterintuitively um, creating more of a sense of freedom in the business than restriction necessarily? Or what do you find?
Yeah, I think they're light touch points that actually create more freedom, because the way I talk about just like a scorecard, which is all the data, is could the founder, be gone for multiple weeks and only look at the scorecard if they
Mm,
if and be able to see how the business is trending. So not talking to anyone, just getting the data points. And I think if they think that way, there is freedom to that, because every week they're getting those data points put into a document that then are being tracked week over week. So those, like, you could see that as constraining, maybe, because you're like, oh, well, there's this extra step, but it really is a freedom, the way that I have worked with clients, for them to see the numbers right in front of them. Because what it is whoever's accountable for that number. So again, use the example of sales, they're responsible for putting that number in each week. So you have this system where department leads are seeing their number, seeing their goal, and having to put it in there and then explain why that's not trending in the right way. So there's a lot of freedom to that, rather than looking at disparate reports and trying to calculate how they all fit together.
yeah, so the business owner can actually, take some time off, go get away from the business for a while, not feel that they're absolutely strapped to it, you know,
Yeah.
like an albatross. Um,
Yeah, I'm working with a client right now who is tied in with deep with everything. So I just finished a 12-month plan how to extract him out. So I
mm,
created a dependency formula, basically, of how he can, quarter over quarter, based on hires, based on training, based on process, start to extract himself out of the 100% of day to day.
mm,
And so, systematically going through that, like hiring this person, they get trained, creating this. It's it was an interesting exercise to go through, because it's exactly that. How do you create the further freedom so you're not 100% of the time in it? Because the
mm,
business has exploded and it's doing really, really well. But the way he's looking at it, or was like, okay, well, I'm just going to 5 more years of this. I'm going to put my head
mm.
down. And then the other day, he's like, actually, I can't do this for 5 more years the way it is. Come
Yeah.
up with a plan to get to alleviate my pain and provide me a plan to get there. So, quarter one is a reduction of 30% of his time in day to day. And then as it goes through the quarters, eventually to about 85, 90% of not being reliant for every department to do the work. But there's a lot that goes into that. You got to hire the right people. You have to have trust built in. They have to be able to deliver to a quality that he's accepting, right? I mean, that's a big thing that I see is not wanting to let go because no one's going to do it like him.
Nobody does
And
as good as me.
I feel that way too, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
well,
that's
I'm not
pretty
going
much the same for everybody. Yeah.
I know, but there has to be of like, hey, I'm okay with 90% of what because most people have such a care for their company, they're going to do it in a way that most don't see. So you have to bring in people who are detail oriented, who really care. And that could go tie back to your core values of how do you hire against that. I'm big on going, all right, I'm interviewing for this person. This is the position, but do they fit the core values? And that core value could be, we care about the work, or we're incredibly organized on behalf of our clients, whatever it might be. But you can create those and then hire against that in order to establish the right type of talent coming in.
That's interesting.
Ultimately, it empowers your team. They don't always have the boss breathing down their necks and looking over their shoulder.
Exactly. Yeah, because it's seen as micromanaging, but what the reality is it's I care, and maybe you don't care as much as I do, but I care because I'm going to do it this way. But ultimately, that drives the founder into a spot which I just mentioned, whereas I can't do it anymore, right? So there has to be a release of that as well, which is a learning experience for them too.
So as far as like the hiring component there, just going back a couple steps, are you encouraging them to sort of frame the questions around the values so you can kind of elicit how they're feeling about those, or what is the process there?
I've actually implemented a couple different processes, but it just depends on what the client's looking for. So I've done you start with a Loom video. So you're already seeing how they answer 3 questions. You also weed out the majority of people who are like, I'm not doing a Loom video, right? So now you have people who actually care. Then once they do a Loom video and you give them a personality test. Now, does that personality test fit to the role? Right?
Yeah.
Then you have the interview where you're focused on the actual job. So you have the person who's doing that job or responsible for that job interviewing. And then secondly, you're doing a culture fit, which typically would be HR, or it might be another person on the team. So you've created this system of like, only the best are going to get through. Because if you look at it, just the people who are dumping the resumes into, applying, you can just weed all of them out because they didn't follow the instructions, which says put a Loom video.
One thing I didn't hear you say is that you're using AI to analyze the resumes.
No, definitely not. Because here's the way I look at it. If someone sends a Loom video and they're reading off a script, I'm not interested. Because I want someone to be able to speak freely and answer questions. And if they're like, hi, my name's Kris, and you can see them reading their screen, it's like, one, great that you prepared, love it. But also at the same time, it shows that there's a dependency on having things. Now, the role, it depends on the role, of course. But I've had sales people do a Loom and they're reading off a script. And that's just not, you need salespeople who are going to be able to bend and flex and and react to the client or the potential client. And so that's the like method that I would look at, because there is a reason why personalities and tests are there, because if that doesn't match up to a salesperson, then they're next. It's just as simple as that.
Really interesting. I feel like we could do a whole hour just talking about the hiring process.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's so many different ways to go at it, but the biggest one, is that, but also because your core values are unique to that company, making sure they fit that, right? If
Yeah.
it says we always follow through and this person doesn't seem like they're going to follow through, or they're late to the meeting, or
Mm,
they don't send
yeah.
you ask them to send something and they're late on that, you already get a
Mm,
sense of the type of person they are.
mm,
But you could also find that out with a personality test.
yeah. Hmm. It sounds like it's minimal time investment on the part of the company doing the hiring too, to a certain extent. Like you said, weeding people out before you have that time investment of actually getting there and doing those
Mhm.
interviews and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So can you share a story where you have helped businesses put systems in place, and that's actually contributed to their growth?
Yeah, say that one more time. The system's in place.
Can, yeah, can you share a story about, where you've helped a business put things in place, their systems and whatnot, and that's
Right.
contributed to growth?
Yeah. So the company that I came in as a consulting and then ultimately got hired, they didn't have any systems in place. It was basically the two founders and a bunch of contractors, with most of the contractors having full-time work. So you can imagine not really being on a system where people are responding in real time and like quickly. So I created a model from them to hire the key, each sort of department lead as a full-time. And then that full-time person who was the subject matter expert in that area, whether it was media, a creative, then could bring in and hire the right contractors based on them critiquing and evaluating. So that company also was the one I just mentioned of simplifying and strengthening,
Mm,
as well as getting all of the components of EOS in place. So I started when they were about 900K in revenue for the year, and 3 years later we were doing 7 million in revenue. So a
mm,
huge shift. And really, it's like taking that leap of faith of saying no to clients that don't fit who we were looking for. So those event planning needs, we said, sorry, we don't do that anymore. Now that's
mm,
tough for a founder and owners to go like, we're walking away from potential business, but there is that hold tight, stay the course, and
Yeah.
it will come. Now also what we got really good at is the fulfillment and execution, because it was the same types of projects. We did social media and we did influencer and marketing campaigns, and by doing that the team just got the reps and the reps and became really, really good at it. We get good results. Those results turn into case studies. Those case studies turn into uh, marketing collateral that then can go and gain new business. So we went from really no name types of clients, meaning that you went, to working with IMAX, Disney, and some
wow.
really big gaming companies that are global. So with all of that happening, it just transformed the business. And that
Hmm.
the key is getting those operating models in place.
Nice. All right. So another question here, kind of in the same vein. Do you find that certain businesses tend to, like it kind of depends on where they are now, determines how much you can actually do for them? Do you have only work with businesses in a certain growth stage, or in other
Not
words?
necessarily. I'm pretty primarily about the revenue they're doing, or the revenue they're currently, which is around 5 million to 15, 20 million. So there's unique uh, situations that come with companies that are in early stage to more established.
Mhm.
But, and I think Nate, you and I talked about this, or someone else from Alignable, but one of the key things is, or one of the key takeaways that I've learned through the last year and a half of doing consulting is it's the same types of things that are issues. And a lot of it is around not having frameworks, not identifying who does what, all of that types of stuff. So I
Mm,
think there's really not it doesn't, there's different reasons, but they're all related, which is like not having defined definition and clarity about the business. And there's different angles. Sometimes clients have it really defined what the roles are, but they haven't defined the vision and haven't communicated the vision to the staff. And that's one of the a thing that I think is important is to provide reason for people to come into work every day. What is the purpose? And if you can create a purpose, people love to be parts of groups that are growing and striving and have a reason to be in business. And Nate, you mentioned the why. I'll ask a business owner, well, why are you in business? And they'll say, I want to make money. Well, why do you want to make money? And why So you get down to eventually it's really about they want to bring a different component to the world that hasn't been seen or want to help this community. And so if you can bring that to life and share what the vision is, and then routinely share the progress to your team, they start to feel invested in it. And that's how you get people who stay and want to build a culture versus who just want to just do the job and go home. Now, that's fine to do that, but also you want to create a sense of community, and by a vision and a purpose for a company starts to build that.
So what do you do when you talk to a business owner and they say, I'm ready to go. I want to scale this thing, but you find that they haven't done the foundational work that they need.
Then it's right to that. This is what you need, foundational work. But it's not just a one and done. I think that's the owner's clients tend to want to think it's a silver bullet. Like, oh, this can fix everything. And it is one of these things where if you want to have be fit and live a healthy lifestyle, you just don't do it for 1 week, right? It has to be a routine. And I think you can create the vision, but how do you communicate the vision? You can create the core values, but how do you instill them throughout the company? And how do you get people to actually believe them? Most will just write it all down one time and it sits in a GDoc and in a folder. And hey, I checked the box and I did it. I looked for what are the natural ways to bring that in. So for example, every 2 weeks, you could do a little newsletter of what are the wins? What are the, like shout outs to people. You could also say, hey, here's the core value spotlight. And I'm going to give it to Nate because he lives and breathes this core value. So it feels natural and it doesn't feel like corporate in that sense. But there's ways to bring it in. Similarly with the vision. So if you set the vision and in each quarter you have a all agency meeting or all staff meeting, you could talk about, I used to do it this way, where we were, where we are, where we're going. So it's a continuation of the conversation, not a new one. People remember the earlier meeting. So it's like, again, where we were, which is tying it to the last time, where we are, talking about the moment now, and then where do we want to go? And that's where a nice way of bringing that thread in that allows people to see the movement and be excited about the progress of the company.
I love that. That's great. That reminds me of one of my favorite short stories. Where are you going? Where have you been?
Oh,
have to check that out sometime.
Will do.
Anyway, great. Do you find that the businesses that you talk to sometimes think that they're in that I don't know, like they're getting out over their skis, like they think that they're in a different spot than they really are? Do you find that often, or?
Yeah, well, I think not just taking the founder's word for it. What they might go, hey, we're in this spot. We don't have client churn or not client churn. All our employees are happy, etc.
Okay.
And then I go and ask permission to speak to a handful of other people within the company in different roles and different levels, and bring back what I see as the themes. Now I can layer that over what the client said, but just taking their word for it, I think is that, that's the wrong approach, because they're only seeing it from their eyes, and sometimes it's rose-colored glasses.
Oh yeah. Sitting in their ivory tower, right? Is that?
Yeah. What were you going to say, Simon?
Oh no, I was agreeing with you.
I got it.
Yeah, there is a very different perspective from, you know, the guy in the corner office to everybody out in the cubicle.
Those on the front line, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the people,
They,
especially the people on the front lines, actually interacting with clients and customers.
Hmm.
I was going to say, do you feel, Kris, that the people on the front lines tend to have a better perspective, a more accurate perspective on the customers and how the customers are feeling about delivery and that kind of thing? Is that the situation usually?
100%.
Yeah.
There's amazing how quickly you could, low hanging fruit type of tweaks that can happen based on after those stakeholder interviews, because
Mm,
there's little blockers that could just be opened up by
mm,
just shifting a few things, and the owner may not know, it may not be aware of that.
mhm,
So there's also sometimes, which is tricky, is that the problem is the owner,
mm,
Mm.
and
Wow.
that is where they say one thing and do another. They want it, they say the process is this, but they don't follow it. So those are
mm,
conversations of like, I've had
That's an
clients that
integrity problem.
yeah, I've had clients that are like, I know, and I want to fix it. And then I've had ones which I ended up not working with who are like, no, I don't see any problem with that.
mm,
So again, it goes back to the working out. You could tell
mm,
someone they need to work out, but unless they want to do it on their own and for their own reasons, they're not going to go to the gym, So
mhm,
it's one of those, like, they have to be open to it. And I can be a
That's in
personal
order.
trainer to them, but I'm not going to be the one that's pushing them to get there.
mhm,
If they're not open to it. And again, going back to, hey, I just thought you could come in and change it all and make the
mhm.
shifts, but they're
Yeah,
not open to change themselves.
yeah.
Mm.
Do you, okay, so do you find that, well, I guess in order to allow better communication there, how does that work? What are what systems need to communicate with each other? Or I don't know how to say it, but do you help to create the system of communication, from the front lines all the way up to the C-suite, or what is it?
Yeah, I think so the way I look at it is the leadership team has to be the model of how people work and collaborate, and
Mhm,
getting that routine weekly meeting and having it be a safe place where people can actually speak their mind, and that everyone is on the same level, not a hierarchical situation, meaning that, like, Nate, if I'm saying something that's wrong and I'm the CEO, that you'd be like, "Oh, hold on," because everyone's in the pursuit of making the business better, creating this environment where there's trust, there's a collaboration, and there's respect. Now, once you can establish that, then that team becomes the example of how people work together. I acquired, or not acquired, but I came into a leadership team at a full-time business, and two of the main leads were at odds. And they both, in the beginning 2 weeks, started jockeying and positioning, emailing me separately and saying, "Oh, this person and this person." And I sent an email to both. I was like, tomorrow morning, we're getting in an office and we're going to figure it out. So
cage match.
I brought them in, and I gave them an assignment of what are
Yeah.
things that they do well, what are things that
Mm,
opportunity areas, and created a really, like, diplomatic way, but also them being open and honest, because
mhm,
I was like, I'm not going to be in the middle of this. So
mhm,
there's ways to create that trust between, and rebuild the respect. But I was modeling it to them, and then they
mhm,
could model it to their department on how to build that sense of trust and collaboration.
mhm,
That's an example of your culture flowing from the top, where, you
Exactly,
know,
it starts at the top.
yeah,
mhm,
the leaders need to set the tone, you know, the culture, the values, you know, how are we dealing with each other? How do we behave when it comes to customers? How do we behave with our leadership, you know?
Hmm.
yeah.
Do you treat
100%.
the CEO a whole lot different than you treat the janitor, you know?
but you shouldn't.
Hmm.
You know, like people should have the same respect for
Should have the
everyone's
same
goal.
respect. Exactly.
Right. And I think that's where when you get on your, high horse about, hey, well, I'm the leader, so people need to just do what I say is not the culture you want to create. It's being more open and being more understanding that it takes everyone to build a business, and all the way down to the most junior person should be respected the same way. And that's my belief. Obviously, the real world tells you a little bit different, but I've been able to work in and build cultures that people were happy, and people felt supported and respected. And I think that's a key thing. But if you don't have a founder who's willing to do that, and you don't have a leadership team who could care less, then the business is never going to thrive in the way that it should. And that's just an example. I use this as when with professional sports, you're either the team who wins on the field or the court. You always hear there's a great front office, there's a great management team. You can't have a crummy management team and a really good output on the field. It just doesn't work that way. And so all of it has to be working together and creating the same type of culture in order for it to work.
Well, so going along with that then, Kris, what would you say is the cost of growing too soon or scaling too soon?
Just breaking, not thinking through what is going to break. You could get a lot of sales, but what if the team isn't set up to fulfill those? You're just creating havoc. And so I think that's one of the things I look at is an inside out methodology, which is, all right, if we were to grow in this area or in this way, what would break? And you might say, well, we're doing everything manually in spreadsheets. Well, we should probably get a system, right? We should probably invest in some software. Or if this happens in the company, not one person can handle that, right? Or if we grow to a certain amount, we're going to need HR. Like just these things that need to be thought through in order to handle the growth. Now, what comes first, the growth or that investment? You can think about it in parallel. You can think about it in like, where do we invest in a short term? Well, we get a fractional HR person to start out with, or we get this technology or this tech platform, and we do it in a way we only get 5 seats, not 25, right? You can build it in that way so you're not overextending on a financial perspective, but still have a plan in place to build as you grow. And I think that's important rather than just flying by the seat of your pants.
Nice. All right. Well, we're about time here. I guess to do a quick recap, let's see here. Don't chase your growth until your business is built to handle it. I think is one key thing there.
Yeah.
Operations can be a multiplier, or it can also be your ceiling, depending on the situation of the operations. And then Kris, of course, reminds us that we need to fix the foundation first and then scale. So for our CTAs here, visit roh-consulting.com to learn more about Kris and his work, and we'll put a link in the description. And of course, as always, you can take the growth ceiling assessment to find, what's holding your business back now, or book a growth strategy call with us if you're stuck in that reactive mode and you think you're ready to shift. So yeah, thanks a lot, Kris, for joining us, and hope to have you back sometime, I think. So
Great.
All of your great insights. Thank you for all your great insights and your wisdom.
We need to have a conversation just about HR, I think.
Yeah. I think that's probably where most of most operations are centered around. Is your team who's actually
that's a loaded term, operations, I think.
Yeah, it certainly is. It certainly is.
Yeah.
It is. Fantastic. Well,
Awesome.
thank you so much, Kris, for joining us today and for sharing your expertise with us. And thank you for watching. And hopefully, you learned a lot today. Put your biggest takeaways in the comments, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us.